The first bottle missed Evelyn Hart by less than a foot. It struck the steel barricade, burst open, and sprayed warm soda across the polished boots of two security guards who had been watching the crowd instead of the woman they were paid to protect. Evelyn did not scream. Famous people learned early that fear could become tomorrow's headline. She simply stopped beneath the white loading dock light, one hand tightening around her microphone case, while hundreds of fans pressed against the temporary fences outside Nashville's Briar Hall. Their voices blended into one hungry roar. Most were calling her name. One man was not. He stood 3 rows back in a gray hooded jacket, perfectly still, holding a bouquet of white lilies against his chest. 30-year-old Malcolm Reed noticed him because stillness looked wrong inside a moving crowd. Malcolm was not part of Evelyn's private security team. He was an overnight maintenance technician at Briar Hall, a broad-shouldered black man in a faded navy work shirt with a wrench clipped to his belt and a purple child's backpack hanging from one hand. He had finished repairing a broken backstage door and was already late picking up his 7-year-old daughter, Nia, from the venue daycare room. He should have kept walking. He had rent due, an unreliable truck, and no reason to involve himself in the problems of a platinum-selling singer surrounded by professionals. Then the man with the lilies lowered the flowers. Something metallic flashed beneath the paper wrapping. Malcolm set down Nia's backpack. "Ma'am," he said, keeping his voice low. Evelyn turned, irritation crossing her face before she registered the direction of his gaze. "Keep moving toward the van. Don't run." Her lead guard stepped between them. "Back up, maintenance." Malcolm did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He pointed once. Gray hood, white flowers, right hand under the paper. The guard looked too late. The man shoved forward, knocking 2 fans aside. The barricade tilted. Screams tore through the loading area as people stumbled. Malcolm moved before anyone gave him permission. He crossed the open pavement, caught Evelyn around the shoulders without, crushing her, and turned his own back toward the crowd. A sharp object scraped across his work jacket. He drove Evelyn behind a concrete support column, then planted himself between her and the charging man. The attacker reached into the flowers again. Malcolm struck his wrist against the column, forcing a folding knife onto the ground. He did not hit him after that. He simply pinned the man's arm, held him there, and said, "It's over. Don't make it worse." Security finally arrived. The crowd kept screaming. Evelyn stared at the thin cut across Malcolm's shoulder and the purple backpack lying alone beneath the lights. Then a little girl ran from the hallway shouting, "Daddy!" Malcolm's face changed at once. The strength remained, but the hardness disappeared. He released the attacker to the guards and dropped to one knee as Nia collided with him. "I'm okay, Bug," he whispered. Evelyn had performed before 50,000 people without losing her breath. But watching that man comfort his daughter while blood darkened his sleeve, she suddenly could not find any air at all. Police sealed the loading dock within minutes. Phones appeared everywhere. Fans filmed the handcuffed attacker, the bent barricade, Evelyn's pale face, and Malcolm kneeling beside his daughter. Her manager, Grant Keller, moved through the confusion with his phone already pressed to his ear. "No statements," he ordered. "Nobody says anything until legal approves it." Evelyn barely heard him. She was watching Malcolm refuse medical attention. A paramedic held gauze toward his shoulder, but Malcolm kept looking at the clock above the service entrance. "It's shallow," he said. "Tape it. I need to get my daughter home." Nia stood beside him holding the purple backpack with both hands. She wore glittery sneakers and a yellow coat 1 size too large. Her eyes kept drifting toward Evelyn, not with the feverish excitement of the crowd, but with the cautious curiosity of a child who sensed that adults were hiding fear. Evelyn approached them. Grant caught her elbow. "Not now. There are cameras." She pulled free. "That's exactly why now matters." Malcolm stood when she reached him, not because she was famous, but because that was how he had been raised to greet someone. "You saved my life," Evelyn said. "I moved you out of the way. You put yourself between me and a knife. My daughter was 20 feet away. I wasn't going to let a man with a weapon run through that hallway." His answer landed differently from the heroic speech Grant was already preparing for the press. Malcolm had not acted because Evelyn Hart was valuable. He had acted because people were in danger. She opened her mouth to thank him again, but Grant stepped in. "Mr. Reed, we'll compensate you for the damaged clothing and any medical costs. Our office can arrange a confidentiality agreement tonight." Malcolm looked at him for a long second. "A confidentiality agreement? Standard procedure. You think I helped her so I could sell a story?" Grant smiled without warmth. "We don't know what anyone intends." Nia's fingers tightened around her father's hand. Malcolm glanced down at her and chose calm over pride. "Then you should probably get to know people before insulting them." He turned to Evelyn. "I'm glad you're safe, ma'am." He took the backpack, thanked the paramedic, and walked toward the employee parking lot. Evelyn watched him leave in an old pickup with rust along the rear fender. Grant began explaining media strategy, but every word sounded polished and empty. "Find out who he is," she said. Grant lowered his phone. "Why?" "Because he was the only person out there who saw the danger before it reached me. Your security team will handle the review." Evelyn looked toward the blood-stained gauze Malcolm had left on the paramedic's tray. "My security team was watching the crowd." He was watching the person. Across town, Malcolm drove with one hand while Nia held an ice pack against his shoulder. "Was that really Evelyn Hart?" she asked. "Yes." "The Evelyn Hart? Still just a person, Bug." Nia considered this. She looked scared. Malcolm looked at the dark road ahead. Most people do when nobody around them is really looking. He did not know that Evelyn would replay those words in her mind before morning. Malcolm's apartment sat above a closed laundromat on the south side of Nashville. The stairwell smelled faintly of detergent, old paint, and somebody's late-night cooking. Inside, everything was modest but carefully kept. A row of Nia's drawings covered the refrigerator. A coffee maker with a cracked handle sat beside a jar labeled emergency fund, though the folded bills inside would not have covered a real emergency. Malcolm cleaned his cut in the bathroom, while Nia stood in the doorway and watched with the seriousness of a nurse. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "Only when I pretend it doesn't." She frowned. "That doesn't make sense. Most grown-up things don't." He smiled, and she finally smiled back. After putting her to bed, Malcolm sat at the kitchen table with black coffee and the incident report Briar Hall required from employees. He wrote only facts. No dramatic language. No praise for himself. He described the gray jacket, the flowers, the weapon, the path toward the loading dock, and the delay in the security response. At 1:17 a.m., his supervisor called. "Corporate wants you off schedule until the investigation is finished." Malcolm stared at the rent notice beneath his coffee cup. "Am I suspended?" "They're calling it paid administrative leave." "Paid at full hours?" Silence answered before the supervisor did. "We'll see what payroll approves." Malcolm thanked him anyway. Anger could not buy groceries. Across the city, Evelyn sat alone in a hotel suite larger than Malcolm's entire apartment. Her stage makeup had been removed, but a faint silver line remained near her eyelids. The room was quiet except for the vibration of her phone. Messages from publicists. Messages from executives. Messages from people asking whether the incident would affect ticket sales. Her mother had sent 3 words, "Call me tomorrow." Grant stood near the window reviewing a draft statement. An obsessed fan breached the perimeter but was immediately subdued by professional security. Evelyn looked up. "That's not what happened." "It's the cleanest version. A maintenance worker saw him. My security ignored the warning. We don't publicly undermine our own team. So we erase Malcolm?" Grant's expression sharpened. "You know his name already. He told me. And tomorrow he'll have reporters outside his home if we identify him. Is that what you want?" Evelyn hated that he had a point, but she hated more how easily truth became an inconvenience in rooms like this. Detective Lena Ortiz arrived shortly before 2. She placed photographs on the table. The knife, the lilies, handwritten pages found in the attacker's car. The man's name was Curtis Vale. He had attended 9 shows in 4 states. He had sent Evelyn letters describing private routines that had never been made public. This wasn't spontaneous, Ortiz said. Someone may have been feeding him information. Evelyn felt the room grow colder. "Who knew my exit route tonight?" Grant answered too quickly. "Dozens of staff." Ortiz looked at him, then back at Evelyn. Until we know more, change your hotel, your vehicle, and your schedule. Also, the man who intervened noticed details your team missed. I want to speak with him again. Evelyn looked at the city lights beyond the glass. Malcolm had stepped into danger without knowing her. Everyone else around her knew everything about her and had somehow failed to see the threat. Fame had filled her life with people. It had not filled it with safety. The next afternoon, Malcolm opened his apartment door and found Evelyn Hart standing in the hallway wearing jeans, a dark wool coat, and a baseball cap pulled low over her blonde hair. No photographers, no manager. Only Detective Ortiz waited downstairs in an unmarked car. Malcolm looked past Evelyn, then back at her. How did you find my address? The detective had it. That doesn't explain why you're here. I came to apologize. Nia appeared behind him holding a bowl of cereal. Her eyes widened. You're the woman from Daddy's work. Evelyn removed her cap. I am. Nia looked at Malcolm. Is she allowed inside? Evelyn almost laughed, but Malcolm did not. He considered the question as though his daughter's comfort mattered more than celebrity, police business, or social expectation. Only if she wants cereal, he said. 10 minutes later, one of the most photographed singers in America sat at a small kitchen table across from a 7-year-old who was explaining why marshmallows counted as a breakfast food. Malcolm stood at the counter brewing coffee. He had changed a bandage on his shoulder. His movements were controlled, but Evelyn could feel the distance in him. Grant was wrong to speak to you that way, she said. He was protecting your business by assuming the worst about you. People with power call it caution when they do it. People without power call it what it feels like. Evelyn lowered her eyes. There was no accusation in his tone. That made it harder to defend herself. She placed an envelope on the table. This covers your missed work and medical costs. Malcolm did not touch it. Briar Hall said the leave was paid. It may not be. Then I'll deal with Briar Hall. Why won't you let me help? He set a mug before her. Because help that comes with guilt usually asks for something later. Nia stopped eating. The room became very quiet. Evelyn looked at the envelope. I'm not trying to buy forgiveness. Then don't buy anything. He sat across from her. Say what you came to say. She had delivered speeches at award ceremonies and testified before lawmakers about musicians' rights. Yet this simple request left her exposed. I'm sorry, she said. Not only for Grant. I saw you as part of the building until you saved me. I don't like what that says about me. Malcolm's expression softened by a degree. Seeing it is better than pretending it isn't there. Detective Ortiz called Evelyn's phone. Another package had arrived at the hotel despite the location change. Inside was a photograph of Evelyn entering Malcolm's apartment less than 15 minutes earlier. On the back, someone had written, "He cannot keep you from me." Malcolm read the message once. Then he crossed to the window and moved the curtain only enough to see the street. A dark sedan idled at the corner. Get Nia's coat, he said. Evelyn stood. What are you doing? Moving my daughter somewhere safe. This is because of me. Right now, blame is a luxury. His voice remained quiet. Safety first. Feelings later. Detective Ortiz moved Nia to the home of Malcolm's sister, Renee, while officers searched the block. The dark sedan disappeared before they reached it. Grant demanded that Evelyn return to a secure hotel, but Ortiz refused to move her until the surveillance route was cleared. For 3 hours, Evelyn remained inside Malcolm's apartment with 2 officers stationed downstairs. It was the first time she had been forced into stillness without a stylist, assistant, or schedule waiting to claim her. Malcolm checked every window, photographed the suspicious vehicle's tire marks, and wrote down the exact time it had left. Were you in the military? Evelyn asked. No, police. No. Then how do you notice everything? He looked at the empty hook where Nia's backpack usually hung. When you're the only parent, you learn that being distracted has a cost. Evelyn sat on the couch beside a stack of library books. One was about stage lighting. Another was a children's book called The Quiet Bear. Nia's mother? She asked carefully. Malcolm's shoulders stiffened. She died 4 years ago. Heart condition. We thought we had more time. Evelyn whispered, I'm sorry. So is everybody. Then they went home. The sentence was not bitter. It was simply true. He handed her a bowl of soup he had warmed on the stove. She stared at it. You're feeding me after my life brought danger to your door. The soup was already made. You always reduce kindness to something practical. Keeps people from turning it into debt. She tasted the soup. It was simple, warm, and better than the expensive meals she often left untouched after shows. Her phone vibrated repeatedly on the table. Grant, her label, her mother. Malcolm did not ask who was calling. He sat in a wooden chair near the window, giving her silence without making it feel empty. Eventually, she turned the phone face down. When I was 19, my first manager told me never to be alone in public, she said. At 21, he told me never to trust anyone in private. By 26, I had millions of people singing my lyrics and nobody I could call after midnight. Malcolm watched the street. That sounds crowded. It is. Crowded and lonely aren't opposites. She studied his profile. Do you always know what to say? No, I just don't rush to. Feel get. An officer knocked and reported that Evelyn's secure vehicle was ready. Before leaving, she noticed the unopened envelope still on the kitchen table. You really won't take it? Malcolm shook his head. But I'll ask you for something. She waited. Tell the truth about what happened. My daughter saw cameras outside her aunt's house tonight. I don't want her learning that powerful people survive by rewriting ordinary people out of the story. Evelyn nodded. I'll tell the truth. At the door, she paused. And Malcolm, yes. Your house felt safer than any hotel I've stayed in. He looked at the empty hallway, then at the police officer waiting beside her. Safety isn't the locks, he said. It's knowing the person inside won't use your fear against you. The door closed softly between them, but something had already crossed the distance. Evelyn's public statement went live the next morning. She rejected Grant's prepared language and spoke directly into her phone from a secure rehearsal studio. Last night, a Briar Hall employee named Malcolm Reed recognized a threat that others missed. He protected me, helped security restrain the attacker, and asked for nothing in return. Any report that erases his role is untrue. The video reached millions of views before noon. Most comments praised Malcolm. Some accused him of staging the attack. Others dug through public records, found his wife's obituary, his address, and photographs from Nia's school fundraiser. Kindness had entered the internet and come back wearing teeth. Malcolm discovered reporters outside Renee's house when he arrived to pick up Nia. He guided his daughter through the crowd without speaking, one hand protecting the back of her head. A journalist shouted, "Are you and Evelyn Hart romantically involved?" Another asked how much money he had received. Nia began to cry. Malcolm stopped, turned toward the cameras, and said only, "There's a child here." The crowd quieted just enough for him to reach the door. Evelyn saw the footage from rehearsal. She ended the session immediately. Grant followed her into the hallway. You cannot keep reacting emotionally. A 7-year-old is being surrounded because of me, because her father became part of a national story. Evelyn faced him. He became part of the story when he saved my life. He became a target when your team leaked his name before I made the statement. Grant's expression changed. Careful. Was it you? I manage your image. Sometimes information has to be released strategically. You sent reporters to his home. I gave one outlet background so we could shape the narrative. Evelyn stared at him as though seeing a stranger wearing a familiar face. You're fired. Grant laughed once. You are frightened and exhausted. We'll discuss this tomorrow. No, you spent 6 years teaching me that every human moment is a liability. Pack your office. That evening, Evelyn arrived at Renee's house with 2 licensed security officers and a written plan to relocate the family temporarily. Malcolm met her on the porch. I asked you to tell the truth, he said. I didn't ask you to turn my daughter into content. I didn't know Grant leaked the address. But you knew what attention does. Yes. Her honesty stopped his anger from rising further. I should have protected your privacy before speaking. I was thinking about correcting my story. I wasn't thinking about what it would do to yours. Malcolm looked through the window. Nia sat on the floor beside Renee, drawing with her shoulders hunched. Apologies don't make children unafraid. No, Evelyn said, but changed behavior might. She offered him the relocation plan. No publicity. No contracts. No payment required. A quiet guest house outside the city, registered under a corporate trust, with transportation for Nia's school. Malcolm read every page. Why are you doing this? Because my danger reached your child. Guilt again. Responsibility. He held her gaze, searching for performance and finding none. Those aren't always the same, she added. After a long silence, Malcolm accepted the keys. Not for himself. For Nia. Evelyn understood the difference. And for the first time in years, being understood mattered more to her than being thanked. The guest house stood beyond a line of cedar trees 40 minutes outside Nashville. It was smaller than Evelyn's main residence, but larger than any home Malcolm had ever lived in. Nia chose the bedroom with blue curtains and immediately placed her purple backpack beside the bed. Malcolm inspected doors, windows, alarms, and the route to the nearest hospital. Evelyn watched without interrupting. She had come only to hand over access codes, yet Nia asked whether she could stay for dinner. Malcolm looked at Evelyn. She has people waiting. Evelyn glanced at her silent phone. No one who can't wait longer. They ate spaghetti at a wooden table beneath soft yellow lights. Nia talked about planets. Evelyn listened as though no interview had ever asked a more important question. After dinner, Nia found an old acoustic guitar in the den. Do you sing at home? She asked. Evelyn smiled faintly. Not much anymore, but singing is your job. Jobs can make you forget why you love something. Malcolm was washing dishes. He did not turn around, but his hands slowed. Nia held out the guitar. Daddy sings when he thinks I'm asleep. Malcolm looked over his shoulder. Nia, you do. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Is that true? I make noise in approximately the right key. Nia demanded a song. Malcolm dried his hands, sat on the edge of a chair, and played 3 gentle chords. His voice was low, imperfect, and warm. He sang a lullaby his late wife had written for Nia, a song about porch lights remaining on for people who had lost their way. Evelyn stopped breathing for a different reason than fear. No studio polish, no production, only a father keeping someone's memory alive for his child. When the song ended, Nia leaned against him. Evelyn looked down so they would not see her eyes fill. That was beautiful, she said. Malcolm placed the guitar aside. It belonged to my wife. The song, the hope. Later, after Nia slept, Evelyn stood on the porch while rain whispered through the trees. Malcolm joined her with 2 mugs of coffee. Hers had cream. His was black. You remembered, she said. You left half of yours untouched in my apartment. You noticed too much. It's kept people alive. She wrapped both hands around the mug. Curtis knew my rehearsal changes. Hotel floors, private entrances. Ortiz thinks someone close to me helped him. Who had access? Grant, my assistant Celia. Security, label executives, drivers. Too many people. Who benefits from you being afraid? The question unsettled her. She had been asking who wanted to harm her. Malcolm was asking who wanted to control her. Grant always became more necessary after a threat, she said slowly. He chose the hotels, approved the guards, filter my calls. Malcolm did not accuse. Fear makes a good cage when the door looks like protection. Evelyn looked toward the dark trees. For 6 years, Grant had called isolation safety. Perhaps the dangerous fan was not the only man who had mistaken control for love. Detective Ortiz returned to Briar Hall with Malcolm 2 days later. He was not an investigator, and he made that clear. But Ortiz wanted him to reconstruct what he had noticed before the attack. Evelyn joined them against advice from her new security chief. The loading dock had been cleaned. The broken bottle was gone. The bent barricade had been replaced. Only a pale scratch on the concrete column marked where Malcolm had forced Curtis's wrist down. Show me where everyone stood, Ortiz said. Malcolm positioned the guards, the van, Evelyn, and the crowd from memory. Then he looked up at a security camera mounted beneath the awning. That one was pointed farther left that night. The venue manager insisted it had not been moved. Malcolm asked for maintenance records. A work order showed the camera had been adjusted 3 hours before the concert by a subcontractor using credentials authorized through Grant Keller's office. Ortiz's expression hardened. Evelyn felt something inside her go still. The footage had a 7-minute gap beginning just before she exited the building. Grant said the cameras proved security responded immediately, she whispered. He knew there was a gap. Ortiz collected the records. That does not prove he arranged the attack. It proves he interfered with evidence or knew someone who did. Malcolm noticed a second detail. The service door he had repaired that night had been deliberately jammed so the magnetic lock would not engage. Someone had wanted a clear path from the crowd to the hallway leading toward the daycare room. Evelyn looked at Nia's purple backpack in her memory and went pale. Curtis wasn't only trying to reach me. He could have reached the children. Malcolm's jaw tightened, but his voice remained level. Then we stopped guessing and find out who opened the path. On the way out, a Briar Hall executive approached Malcolm. We need to discuss your employment. Your public involvement has created complications. Evelyn stepped forward, but Malcolm raised one hand gently. He did not need rescuing from conversation. What complications, he asked. Media disruption, security concerns, questions about whether you exceeded your role. My role included keeping the building safe. Your role was maintenance. Malcolm looked at the repaired door, then at the executive. A title tells you what somebody is paid to notice. Character tells you what they refuse to ignore. The executive flushed. Evelyn said, nothing until the man walked away. You knew I wanted to defend you. I did. Why stop me? Because respect isn't replacing a man's voice with a more powerful one. She absorbed the correction without resentment. That, more than any apology, showed Malcolm she was changing. Outside, Ortiz received a call. Police had searched Grant's former office. They found no direct communication with Curtis, but they recovered a second phone containing deleted messages to Evelyn's assistant, Celia. One message had been sent hours before the attack. Make sure she uses the east exit. The scare needs to feel real. Evelyn closed her eyes. The danger had never been random. Someone had designed her fear and miscalculated the courage of a man they had never bothered to see. Celia was arrested before sunset. Under questioning, she admitted that Grant had paid her to leak schedules and encourage Curtis through anonymous fan accounts. Grant claimed he intended only to create a controlled security incident that would convince Evelyn to renew his management contract. He insisted the knife had not been part of the plan. Curtis had crossed the line from obsession into violence, but Grant had built the road that carried him there. Police issued a warrant. Grant disappeared. Evelyn's label urged her to cancel the tour and remain hidden. Instead, she shut herself inside the guest house music room and stared at an unfinished song on the piano. Malcolm found her there after putting Nia to bed. Ortiz says Grant may try to contact me, she said. He knows how I think. Then stop thinking the way he trained you to. Her fingers rested motionless on the keys. He found me when I was 20. He negotiated my first real contract. When my father died, Grant handled everything. I thought dependence meant trust. Malcolm leaned against the doorway, leaving space between them. Sometimes the person holding the umbrella is also the one telling you it never stops raining. She looked at him. How do you know when help is real? Real help leaves you stronger when it walks away. The answer broke something open. Evelyn pressed a hand to her mouth and began to cry without elegance. Malcolm did not rush toward her. He did not tell her to be strong. He sat on the floor a few feet away and waited. After several minutes, she whispered, Would you hate me if I canceled every show? No, would you think I was weak? No, what would you think? That you're allowed to decide what your life costs. Evelyn lowered her hand. Everyone has an opinion about what Evelyn Hart owes them. What does Evelyn owe herself? No interviewer had ever asked her that. She looked at the unfinished sheet music. A life I don't have to survive every day. Malcolm nodded once. The quiet between them settled like a blanket rather than a wall. Then headlights swept across the window. Malcolm stood immediately. The security team had not announced a vehicle. He moved Evelyn away from the glass and checked the monitor. A black SUV waited beyond the gate. Grant stepped out alone, holding both hands where the cameras could see them. He pressed the intercom. Evelyn, I need 5 minutes. Then I'll surrender. Her face drained of color. Malcolm reached for his phone. Grant continued. Ask your hero whether he wants his daughter's school address posted online. I still have every file. Malcolm's eyes hardened. Evelyn saw fear enter him for the first time, not for himself, but for Nia. She stepped toward the intercom. "You don't control me anymore." Grant smiled into the camera. "Then come outside and prove it." Malcolm blocked the door. "He wants you emotional. He threatened your daughter, which is why neither of us gives him what he wants." He called Ortiz, activated the house alarm, and moved Nia to the reinforced safe room. Grant began striking the gate with a tire iron. Evelyn stood beside Malcolm in the hallway, trembling. "I brought this to your family." Malcolm met her eyes. "No, he did." Outside, metal screamed against metal. Inside, Malcolm's voice stayed steady. "The person causing harm owns the blame. Don't carry what belongs to him." Grant broke the outer gate before police reached the property. The security officers held position near the house, but Grant abandoned the SUV and disappeared into the tree line. Rain had begun again, soft at first, then hard enough to erase footprints. Malcolm remained inside with Evelyn and Nia. He knew the house better now. He knew which doors stuck, which lights cast shadows, and which section of the rear fence backed onto an old drainage path. When a motion sensor blinked near the kitchen, he understood where Grant was headed. "Take Nia to the safe room," he told Evelyn. "You're not going outside," she said. "I'm locking the rear entrance. Let security do it." A crash sounded from the mudroom. Grant had thrown a stone through the narrow window beside the door and reached inside for the lock. Malcolm pushed Evelyn toward the hallway. "Now!" She obeyed because trust sometimes looked like letting another person do what he was prepared to do. Malcolm entered the kitchen as Grant forced the door open. Grant was soaked, bleeding from one hand, and carrying the tire iron. "You ruined everything," he said. Malcolm positioned himself between Grant and the hallway. "Put it down. She was manageable before you. She was afraid." "Same thing." Grant swung. Malcolm stepped aside, caught his forearm, and drove him against the counter. The tire iron fell, but Grant reached for a knife inside his coat. Malcolm trapped his wrist with both hands. He could have broken it. Rage offered him a clear invitation. This man had endangered Nia, manipulated Evelyn, and brought violence into the one place meant to be safe. Malcolm tightened his grip. Then Nia's voice echoed from the hallway. "Daddy." Everything inside him changed. He could not teach his daughter that protection meant losing himself. Malcolm forced Grant's hand flat against the floor and kicked the knife away. "You don't get to decide what kind of man I become," he said. Security officers rushed in seconds later and restrained Grant. Evelyn ran to Nia, covering the child's eyes against the scene. Police vehicles flooded the driveway with red and blue light. Ortiz arrived, handcuffed Grant, and read him his rights. As officers led him away, he looked at Evelyn. "You'll come back when you realize nobody else can handle you." Evelyn stood beneath the porch light, rain on her face. "You never handled me," she said. "You kept me frightened enough to handle myself for you." Grant was placed in the patrol car. Malcolm sat on the porch steps while a medic cleaned a cut across his palm. His hands had begun to shake now that the danger was gone. Evelyn sat beside him. "You could have hurt him," she said. "I wanted to, but you didn't." Malcolm looked through the doorway at Nia, wrapped in a blanket. "My daughter remembers what I do after I'm afraid." Evelyn leaned closer, not touching him until he turned his hand palm up between them. Then she placed her fingers gently in his. No cameras captured it. No audience applauded. It was only one frightened person recognizing another and choosing not to let go too soon. Grant's arrest became national news. Charges included conspiracy, stalking facilitation, evidence tampering, burglary, assault, and endangering a child. Evelyn declined every major interview request. Her label wanted a documentary. Streaming platforms offered millions for exclusive access to the story. She refused them all. "Some experiences become smaller when sold," she told her attorney. Instead, she postponed the tour for 6 weeks and paid the full salaries of her crew during the pause. She also established an independent security review that gave venue workers, drivers, cleaners, and temporary staff the authority to report risks without going through celebrity management. Malcolm accepted no public title and no ceremonial award. Briar Hall offered him a promotion after facing criticism for attempting to discipline him. He accepted only after negotiating better emergency procedures for all employees and secure childcare access during events. You could have asked for more money, Evelyn said when he told her. I did ask for more money. You asked for everyone to receive the same safety training. That costs money. She laughed softly. It was the first easy laugh he had heard from her. Weeks passed. Nia returned to school. Reporters moved on. The guest house became quiet again, but Evelyn continued visiting, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with no reason she could explain. She helped Nia build a model of Saturn. She learned to drink ordinary coffee without asking where the beans came from. Malcolm repaired the loose piano pedal in the music room and refused payment because, as he said, it took 12 minutes and one washer. One evening, Evelyn played in the song she had been unable to finish. The lyrics were about a crowded room, a locked door, and a porch light left burning. When the final chord faded, Malcolm remained silent. Say something, she whispered. You stopped performing halfway through. Her face fell. Was it bad? No. The first half sounded like Evelyn Hart. The second half sounded like you. She looked at him for a long time. Which one did you like? The one who didn't need me to clap. Her eyes softened. Nia wandered in wearing pajamas and announced that adults became strange after 8 o'clock. The moment broke into laughter. Later, while Malcolm tucked Nia into bed, Evelyn noticed a framed photograph of his wife on the hallway shelf. She felt no jealousy, only respect for a love that had shaped the man standing before her. You still miss her, Evelyn said when he returned. Every day. Does that make new happiness feel like betrayal? Malcolm looked toward the photograph. It used to. Then I remembered she loved who I became around her. She wouldn't want that man buried with her. Evelyn lowered her voice. And who are you becoming around me? Someone who worries more. She smiled despite herself. That's fair. He stepped closer. Also someone who remembers life, can surprise him without taking something first. They stood within the quiet of the hallway, close enough to hear each other breathe. Evelyn did not ask for a promise. Malcolm did not offer one. Their hands touched lightly between them. Healing did not always announce itself. Sometimes it simply stopped asking permission to remain. Evelyn chose a smaller theater for her first performance after the attack. No stadium. No explosive lighting. No hidden route announced to dozens of contractors. She wanted 2,000 seats, a visible security plan, and staff members whose names she learned before soundcheck. Malcolm attended with Nia, but refused the private balcony. She wants to sit where the music feels real, he said. They took seats near the center aisle among teachers, nurses, mechanics, college students, and parents carrying tired children. Before the show, Evelyn stood backstage in a white suit with her hair tied loosely behind her. Her phone was silent. She had dismissed the habit of carrying 3 devices and answering every vibration. Still, her hands trembled. Malcolm found her near the curtain after a stage manager asked whether he could help. I thought I was ready, she said. Ready doesn't mean calm. What does it mean? You know what you're afraid of, and you walk out without pretending it isn't there. She looked toward the audience. Will you stay where I can see you? Nia chose row 12. That wasn't what I asked. Malcolm understood. Yes, I'll stay. Evelyn stepped onto the stage without an introduction. Applause rose like weather. For 1 second, the old fear returned. Every face became a possible threat. Every movement near an aisle sharpened inside her vision. Then she found row 12. Nia waved both hands. Malcolm sat beside her in an old brown jacket, calm and present. He did not signal that everything was safe. He only reminded her she was not alone. Evelyn approached the microphone. There was a time when I believed strength meant never letting anyone see me afraid, she told the audience. I was wrong. Strength is knowing fear does not get the final decision. She began with a new song. No dancers, no pyrotechnics. Only piano, voice, and the soft ache of words written after midnight. Halfway through, Malcolm recognized the melody from his wife's lullaby. Not copied, but gently answered. Evelyn had built her chorus around the image of a porch light waiting for lost people. He lowered his head, overwhelmed. Nia slipped her hand into his. After the final note, the theater remained silent for one breath, then rose in applause. Evelyn did not look toward the cameras. She looked toward Malcolm. After the show, they met beneath the same kind of loading dock light where their lives had first collided. This time the barricades were secure. Staff members watched with attention rather than assumption. "I changed the ending," she said, "of the song, of the part where the woman waits for someone to save her." Malcolm raised an eyebrow. "What happens now?" "She learns to stand. Then she chooses who stands beside her." Evelyn stepped closer. "I'm choosing carefully." Malcolm looked at Nia, who was pretending not to watch from beside a security officer. "So am I." He touched Evelyn's cheek and kissed her gently. No dramatic music rose around them. No crowd witnessed it. The moment belonged only to three people who understood that love was not rescue. Love was the freedom to remain after rescue was no longer needed. 1 year later, Evelyn performed at Briar Hall again. The loading dock had been rebuilt with stronger barriers, expanded lighting, layered access controls, and a safety station named not after a celebrity, but after the employees whose warnings had once been ignored. Malcolm now served as the venue's director of facilities and safety. He wore a clean charcoal work jacket, though the old wrench remained clipped to his belt. Promotions had not changed the way he greeted cleaners, drivers, stagehands, or children waiting for their parents after late shifts. Nia, now 8, sat backstage doing homework beside Evelyn's guitar case. She had added a new patch to her purple backpack. "Kindness is a quiet revolution." Evelyn's career had not become smaller after she reclaimed it. It became more honest. She performed fewer shows, wrote more of her own music, and hired people who could disagree without punishing her. Her relationship with Malcolm stayed mostly outside the public eye. They did not sell photographs, announce anniversaries, or turn Nia into a symbol. Their life was ordinary in the places that mattered. Saturday pancakes, school pickup, coffee cooling on the porch because conversations lasted longer than expected. Arguments resolved without threats of abandonment. Silence that no longer felt like punishment. Before the concert, Evelyn found Malcolm checking the East Service door. "Still working?" she asked. "Still responsible for a building full of people. You know, there are 3 teams assigned to this now, and yet the door still needs checking." She leaned against the wall. "A year ago, I thought you saved me because you were fearless." Malcolm tested the lock once more. "I was terrified. I know that now. Fear isn't the opposite of courage." "What is?" He considered it. "Indifference." The crowd began chanting Evelyn's name beyond the walls. She reached for his hand. "Come watch from the wings. Nia has my seat. She told me she wants to watch with the lighting crew." Malcolm smiled. "That sounds like her." Together, they walked toward the stage. Near the curtain, Evelyn paused. "Do you ever wish you hadn't noticed that man with the flowers?" Malcolm looked at her, then at Nia laughing with the technician beneath the blue stage lights. "No, even after everything it cost. Some things cost you because they're wrong. Some things cost you because they matter." The introduction music began. Evelyn squeezed his hand and stepped toward the light. Malcolm remained just beyond it, where he had always been most comfortable. Not hidden, not performing, present. The audience saw a famous singer return to the stage. They did not see the quiet man checking the exits, the child drawing stars on a production schedule, or the small glances passing between 2 people who had learned that safety was not possession, and love was not debt. But revolutions rarely begin where crowds are looking. Sometimes they begin beside a concrete column, when an ordinary man sees danger and refuses to look away. Sometimes they continue at a kitchen table, where an exhausted woman is allowed to be human without paying for the privilege. Malcolm never raised his voice to prove his worth. He never demanded gratitude for his courage. He simply remained the kind of man his daughter could trust when the world became loud. And Evelyn did not fall for the person who rescued her. She learned to love the person who respected her enough to let her rescue herself. He did not become her shield. He became the quiet presence that reminded her she no longer had to live behind one.